Ed Carr, born James Edward Carr, April 21st, 1945, when the war in Europe was winding down. I was born to Homer and Gertie Kaiser Carr, and I had a 15-year-old sister when I was born, Velma Jean. I was born up at Fountainhead Hospital, but as a young child, we lived in Gallatin, Tennessee. Now, Daddy was a butcher, and he also kept a food locker there in Gallatin, so people would bring their meats there, and then when they had room at home, they'd take them to their own freezers. My mother worked during the war over at Old Hickory at the DuPont factory, but the fumes and the powders got to her and she had to quit. And speaking of which, I had my own health problems when I was a child. I was born with an enlarged heart, which I outgrew, or some people would say I grew into. And then I was also born with asthma, which I didn't outgrow. When I was just a baby, I'm told that Mama would hold me in her arms, prop me up, so I could breathe easy enough to fall asleep. Now that's tender loving care there. Well, we did well, and my daddy moved to Madison Creek Road, where he continued to work in the meat business, and we owned a farm out there. Now, being a boy growing up on the farm is a good time. I enjoyed riding horses, riding motorcycles up and down that dusty road. When I got older, I enjoyed riding a car here or there. But one of the things that I did as a child that not every boy did was that I would fly model airplanes. I would build them, and then I'd fly them, and then I'd wreck them, and then I'd repair them. And that was really good practice because that prepared me for my life in my own career. But while we were up there on the farm, we began to have our first bit of trouble when Daddy had his first heart attack. My mama responded by going to work again down in Goodlettsville at Malone's grocery store. You know, I went to the Goodlettsville schools as a boy. And then some years after, when I was a teen, Daddy had his second heart attack. He was on his way to pick up a beef for a customer when it started coming on, and he pulled off to the side of the road, but they never were able to get him to the hospital before he died. And oh, that was a sad time for us, because you see, his mama had just died 3 weeks earlier. He was in grief, we were all in grief, and then we lost Daddy. Now, Velma Jean had moved off and gotten married, so it was just me and Mama there. And you know, that farm just proved too much for us to keep up. So Mama sold out, and then since she inherited Grandmother's house, we moved there. I was on Long Hollow Road. And a little bit later on, she sold that house and bought land up next to Velma Jean and built her own house. I lived with Mama off and on for many years. Well, a little bit about me. I enjoyed working on automobiles, working on motorcycles, working on anything that ran in a gas combustion engine, and I knew that's where I wanted to make my living. You know, when I was a kid, I enjoyed putting up dust on Madison Creek Road, and I got a reputation of being a kind of a daredevil driver. Well, there's some that said that I wasn't really very careful when I was driving, but I want you to listen to my uncle, because, you know, he only rode with me once. Well, as I grew up, it was the Vietnam era. I got drafted and I went to basic. I finished basic, but I had a real bad asthma attack and they put me in the hospital, and they figured if I couldn't hack South Carolina, I wasn't going to do so well in Vietnam, and so I got discharged. Well, I went to work in various things, fixing motorcycles in Hendersonville, Gallatin Road. Tried selling insurance, that wasn't for me. Then I went to work at the airport. So I worked on the airport down in East Nashville, a little private airport down there. in the airport up in Portland, Tennessee, and that proved to be my calling in life. Eventually they asked me to manage the Portland airport, and I did that for many years. Now, one of the good things about that is they have factories up there and they're run by these corporations, and they got these executives that like to jet all over the country. So one of the things I was able to do, of course I'd gotten my pilot's license, was jet around these executives, and they were real nice. Sometimes when they weren't using the plane, they said, well, if you want to, go ahead and use it. Now, I didn't use it every day, but I had a chance to use their private plane. Well, I took my last trip in an airplane on April 20th, 1991. It was fine in the morning. Now, you should understand that I flew airplanes for many years. In fact, when I lived in White House, I had an airstrip at my house. I used to fly to my work over there at the airport and fly home. But on that day, we took off early in the morning, me and a buddy, going down to Chattanooga, Tennessee. When we got down there, it was extremely foggy, and the flight tower lost us. And unfortunately, I flew us into a mountain, and it took my life. That was one day before my 46th birthday. Well, they brought me back here, laid me down next to Daddy, and as you can see, Mama followed along some years after that, some 12 years later. On the day of my funeral, some of my friends got in their airplanes and they flew over the cemetery. They did a flyover in my honor, and I understand that's the only time that's really ever happened here. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and coming to see me. If you fly over the next time, if that's the way you come, just make sure you waggle your wings, okay, so I'll know that you're saying hello. You take care now.